Hello students, welcome to the class. I'm Dr. Sonia Kaur Bansal and today I will be teaching you the topic the active and passive voice in English grammar. So students, today's learning objective of my class would be to define what voices of verbs are. We will also learn to differentiate active voice from passive voice. We will also convert an active voice sentence to passive voice sentences. And we will also learn to convert a passive voice sentence to an active voice sentence. So, students, remember that active voice and passive voice. This topic is very important from your examination point of view of any competitive exam, or maybe it is just for the knowledge of how this voice is actually spoken. So, students, all of you get ready, and I really hope that you will listen attentively and will do lots of exercises to understand the active and passive voice concept. All right, students. So, now let's start and study active and passive voice. Before that, just understand what are the voices of verb. So, in traditional grammar, students, voices of verb is defined as the quality of verb that indicates whether its subject acts or it's acted upon. So it has two types, the active voice and the passive voice. So there is something that the way we communicate with each other, active and passive voice plays an important role. Just imagine, students, that you are studying in school level and whatever your friends tell you, or maybe you are studying in higher studies, whatever your friends tell you, you are going to tell it to your parents or anybody else, and then how do you speak to them? When I'm telling you something and then you have to pass it to someone else, how you are going to convey? There are two ways. One, the as it is words which I have spoken to you, and you are conveying it to your parents or anybody else to whom you want to convey my message. The one thing is that you are quoting my words as it is. The another thing is that you will not quote my words and then you will convert my words into your own voice, and then you will convey my message in that way. So these are called the voices of verbs, students. So it has two types, active voice and the passive voice. So understand it in a more elaborative way, and just understand that how this is very important in communication. So let's understand that active voice means that a sentence has a subject that acts upon its verb. That means subject is acting upon its verb. That means something is spoken by the subject and that is quoted well. But in passive voice, students, it means that a subject is a recipient of a verb's action. And you may have learned that the passive voice is weak and incorrect. But it isn't that simple. When used correctly and in moderation, the passive voice is a fine one. So this is how active and passive voice are defined in its terms. So in English grammar, verbs have five properties, students. First is voice, then mood, then tense, then person and number. So here we are concerned with the voice, and the two grammatical voices are active and passive voice. So let's understand it. Now, before uh, telling you the how to use the active and passive voice, or how to convert the active sentence into passive sentence, or how to convert the passive sentence into active sentence, first of all, we must know about when to use active and passive voice. So, using the active voice conveys a strong, clear tone, and the passive voice is a subtler and weaker one. So here is some good advice for you students. Don't use the passive voice just because you think it sounds a bit fancier and the active voice. Okay, so then the active voice, you just be natural in your communication. That said, there are times the passive voice is useful and called for. Take, the squirrel was chased by the dog. For example, this is a sentence, the squirrel was chased by the dog. That sentence construction would be really helpful if the squirrel were the focus of your writing and not the dog. So when you are focusing on particular thing and when you are not, so it matters a lot. So it is not every time you are going to use active and passive voice. So rather it is be comfortable with active only. But when it is used, so just remember where is your focus. So in this case, you just use passive voice if your focus of writing is squirrel, not the dog. So a good rule of thumb is to try to put the majority of sentences in active voice only. Unless you truly can't write your sentences in any other way. Clear, students? Now let's understand the active voice first of all. I'm going to explain you how it is, and then I'm going to explain you how the passive voice is. So we are going to understand it in a very gradual and practicing manner. So I hope you will understand it. So first of all, the active voice. Active means something active in action. Okay, so the active voice is a normal voice, normal spoken sentence which a person is speaking. And this is the voice, students, that we use most of the time. In the active voice, the object receives the action of the verb. So this is how one example is in front of you quoted. Merlin mailed the letter. Now, you just divide this sentence into subject, verb and object. Then you will come to know how it is active in its voice. So, Merlin is a subject and verb is mailed and object is the letter. So, it means the object letter is receiving the action of the verb. So, action is emailing or mailing. So, Merlin mailed the letter. It means the verb is mailed and mailed is actually object is letter and object is receiving the mail. So this is how action is being done in that way. So it is directly spoken. Merlin mailed the letter. That's it. But when we are focusing more on the subject, that is Merlin, here you will find that Merlin is more important than the letter. So Merlin mailed the letter. That's more important. Who mailed the letter? Merlin. All right, students. So this is active voice. Now there are some another examples. You just have a look on them. So the dog jumped onto the boy. So the dog is the subject, is doing the jumping work, and that is the action verb. Onto the boy, that is the object. Then Christy will give a book report to the class. Christy is the subject, is doing the giving. Giving is a verb here. To the class, and class is an object. So that means subject, verb and object. They are arranged in the sentence in a very natural way, in a very normal way. And the verb is actually giving some work to the object. So that is how active voice is in very natural form. Now, steps on how to convert active to passive. Just have a look on the brief scenario, how we are going to change it. Then in detail, we will discuss more. First is move the active sentence, direct object, into sentence subject slot. You can see active voice sentence, when it will be changed into passive voice, it will be changing its object into subject. Number one rule you must remember, that active sentence direct object will be the passive voice sentence subject slot. Okay. Now, so you just have this example. Active voice, Marlene mailed the letter. In this sentence, direct object is letter. But when we are converting this sentence into passive voice sentence, then this direct object, the letter, this will be converted into subject. So the letter was mailed by Merlin. This would be the correct sentence. So how it is going to change, we are going to discuss now. So next, second rule you must know, place the active sentence subject. Whatever is spoken in active sentence, you just place that sentence subject into a phrase beginning with the preposition by. So remember, when we are converting active voice sentence into passive voice, then we are using the preposition by. Clear? So here you can check the example. Merlin mailed the letter, and here is the subject Merlin. And now this Merlin will be gone to the object's place in passive voice sentence, and this will create a prepositional phrase by using by with them. All right. So Merlin mailed the letter. So we started it with the letter dash by Merlin. So this is how the prepositional phrase will be more and more useful in passive voice. Now, third important rule that you must remember, add a form of auxiliary verb to be to the main verb and change the main verb's form. Now, here it is very important to notice in which tense, in which form this active voice sentence is. If it is in present, then auxiliary verb will also be in present tense. Auxiliary verbs are, students, is, am, are, and in past tense they are was, were, according to the singular and plural. And future will be and shall be, they will be used. Okay. So if the active voice Merlin mailed the letter, you can see here mailed is a verb and this is in past tense. That means this work has already been done. So now in that case, Merlin mailed the letter. So we have already seen two rules. The letter, that was the direct object in active voice sentence. We have converted it into subject in passive voice. And then by Merlin, prepositional phrase we have used by using by plus subject of the active voice. Okay, so the letter was mailed by Merlin. Now you are using verb plus be auxiliary. Now the important thing here to remember, change your auxiliary verb according to the tense of the active voice sentence. Clear, students? So these are very simple rules, and if you practice more and more, you will understand how it is converted. Now, what is a passive voice? We have seen active voice, what it is, and we have seen that it is a very normal way of speaking. If anyone is speaking by his own and her, it is a very normal way. But what is a passive voice? So let's understand it also in detail. Now, students, passive voice is less usual. It is not normal in its form. So in the passive voice, the subject is receiving the action of the verb. Just try to make a very clear difference. When we studied about active voice, we studied that object was receiving the action of the verb. But here we are talking that the subject is receiving the action of the verb. So we use the passive voice when we want to make the active object more important. So this is actually depends on us that to whom, to what we want to focus. Are we really want to focus on the object, or are we really want to focus on the subject? Only then you need passive passive voice. Otherwise, you need to code the things in active voice only. So there is a question, there is example in front of you. Just check it out. The letter was mailed by Merlin. This is the passive voice sentence. And now you can see the division of subject, verb and object in a sentence, that the subject has now become the letter, verb is was mailed, that we have already converted in active to passive voice, and object is now here become by Merlin. So this is how the focus is shifted from Merlin to the letter. The letter was mailed by Merlin. So now if we ask by whom this letter was mailed, so this is Merlin. Or what was mailed by Merlin? The letter. So the focus is really shifting from subject to object. Clear, students? Now see some more examples in front of you. Boy was being jumped. Being jumped on, that is verb. By the dog is object. So the boy was jumped on by the dog. A book report will be given by Christy to the class. So report, subject. It is subject. Will be given is a verb. And by Christy. Now you have to notice this thing, students, that when we are talking about it. So I had already told you that we have to be focused on the tense of the active voice. So in which tense, either it is present, past or future, the same tense we are going to apply in the passive voice as well. Clear, students? Now let's have a look on how to go on the steps on how to convert passive voice sentence into active voice sentence. So rule 1, you must understand that move the passive sentence subject into the active sentence direct object slot. You can see passive voice is changing now into active voice. So both type of practices you must do. First one, active to passive, and then passive to active. So both ways you must get mastery over it to just be very well versed with the active and passive voice concept. So here, the passive voice is the letter was mailed by Merlin. Now we are going to change it into active. So the rule is working here. The passive sentence subject, which is now the letter. Okay. So the letter will be into active sentence direct object slot. So just understand in a vice versa situation that whatever is here in subject, in active voice, it will be in object form. It will be direct object now. Clear, students? Now, rule number 2, remove the auxiliary verb be. You have to remove that be, was, or is, or am, or are, whatever you are using, from the main verb and change main verbs form if needed. So, now the letter was mailed. This was be auxiliary and we have to remove it in the active voice. So we are just going to change the form, main verbs form, because here it is was. It is well understood that it is from past tense. And in past tense, if we are not using was, then definitely simple past tense will work in active voice. That is by adding ed to the verb. Mail was mailed. So, mail the letter will be correct in active voice. So, auxiliary verb will also be removed in active voice sentence. Now, let's have a look on the rule number 3. So, place the passive sentence object of the preposition by into the subject slot. Now, this is by Merlin, object or preposition by. So, we talked about prepositional phrase that was by Merlin. Now, we are removing by when we are converting the passive voice sentence into active voice. So, Merlin will become now subject slot in the active voice and by will be removed. So, understood, students? So, this is very simple if you practice more and more about it. All right. Now students, just have a look in present, past, future and conditional sentences infinitive to be washed. So this is how it is going to be changed in your active and passive voice subjects. If you look at them with one example, you will be able to do more in the same way with many examples. Now we have simple tense, continuous tense, perfect simple tense and perfect continuous tense. So how it is done in the active to passive voice, you have to understand that. Now in simple present tense, if it is written, it is washed. Past tense, it will be, it was washed. And in future tense, it will be washed. And in conditional sentences, it would be washed. And if we are talking about continuous tense, so present tense would be, it is being washed, be plus ing. So we are using the sentences like that. But in past tense, it was being washed when you are changing active sentence into passive voice. Then in future, it will be being washed. Conditional sentence, it would be being washed. So this is how your active sentences would be changing into passive voice. Then in perfect simple case, present tense, it has been washed. It had been washed in past tense. Then in future, it will have been washed. In conditional, it would have been washed. Now in present, it has been being washed. So this is how perfect continuous condition will be working in present tense, and in past tense, it had been being washed. Then in future tense, it will have been being washed. In conditional cases, it would have been being washed. Now you have seen how you are going to change the verbs according to the form of the verb tense in the active voice. Clear, students? Now let's have a look in a very clear way. Now till now we have understood that active and passive voice are made up of voice, that we speak something, voice that is coming out from our mouth. Whatever we are speaking, there are two ways. So understand it now in that way. So there are two ways of voice. One is active, that is directly being done by the subject, and another is passive, that is the focus is on the action. So this is simple thing that you must understand when we are understanding about active and passive voice. So this is how, students, you must remember that active means focus is on subject and passive means focus is on action. Now active sentences here, Ram killed Ravan. That means, students, that focus is on Ram, who is subject in first sentence or the active sentence. But in the second sentence, Ravan was killed by Ram. Now the focus is shifted on the action. Ravan was killed. This is an action. By Ram, we have used prepositional phrase. By Ram. So we have converted the active sentence into passive voice, and by following the rules which I have just told you. Now how to change from active to passive, just let's have a look on more and more practice. Now look at this statement. Ram killed Ravan. So there is subject is Ram, verb is killed, and Ravan is object. So Ravan was killed by Ram. Now here a object has become the subject of the active voice sentence, that is Ravan has now become object here. Was killed by Ram, be verb, auxiliary verb, which I have told you, that is here. Was killed, verb's third form. If I'm writing verb 3, that means verb's third form will be used with was or be verb. By Ram is the subject now changed here. So Ram killed Ravan, Ravan was killed by Ram. This is the way how we are going to change the active sentence into passive sentence. Now, let's have more examples. She helps him. So, him will be converted into he, because now we have changed the direct object into subject slot. So him is used for male, so that's why we are using he. But if it would have been here, she helps her, that means her means female, so we would have used here she. But now in this case, she helps him means he is helped by her. Next example, students, I'm buying a pen. So a pen is being bought by me. Now you have just notice the structure of the passive voice and active voice as well. I am buying a pen. Now buying is verb plus ing form, and it is in present continuous tense. So it will be in continuous form only. And when there is ing with verb in active voice sentence, then we are definitely going to use be plus ing form. Being, that is being plus third form of the verb in the passive voice sentence. So a pen is put into subject slot, a pen. As why we have used is with this sentence, because I am, that is not past tense and it is present tense. So a pen is being bought by me. Clear? This is something not usual, that how do we speak. But when we want to learn how to change active from passive, so this is the proper method you must learn. So that's why it is told to you that active voice is more normal to learn. All right. Now, next example, you must look at that. He has to teach us. He has to teach us. That means we have to be taught by him. So, us is required to put into subject slot. So, us passive voice will be we, and have to be taught. Hey, because have to, why there is have to be, because has to there in the active voice, so it would be have to be, because we is the plural and we can't use has with we, and we have to be using we have to be taught by him. Be plus taught, so be plus third form of the verb will always be there. Now next is someone is following us. So we are being followed. Now active sentence, see the structure how it is. It will be subject plus verb plus object. But in passive voice, the structure what it would be followed, object plus be plus verb's third form plus by subject, that is prepositional phrase. By is a preposition, and when we are adding subject with that, so we are making that prepositional phrase. All right, students, I hope you have understood this much. So let's proceed further. Now students, let's have focus on very common rule. And what is the common rule here? Bring the object first. Choose correct be verb. What I have defined you, I'm just repeating it so that your practice will be more and more enhanced. And if you're doing it with me, then definitely your practice will be up to the mark. So bring the object first and choose correct be verb. That is dependent on your tense form of the verb, how it is used. Then change verb into participle, add by plus subject. So object plus we plus verb, verb's third form plus by subject. Now you can very well understand it with the example given to you on your screen. She helps him. Now with arrow you can very well understand she is changed into subject or from subject slot to object slot, and it has become by her. Helps, as it is present tense, simple present tense, so it is helped. So be form is used and plus verb's third form is used, and him is put into a subject slot from the object slot. So he is helped by her. Now look how subject and object change. You have to remember all these things very clearly, how the subject and object change from active to passive voice, students. So I changes into me, we changes into us, you remains same in passive voice also, they becomes them, he becomes him, she becomes her, Ram will be Ram. It means name will be name. Noun will not be changed. Name of person, place or thing, they will be same. They will not be changed in any case. Clear, students? So now let's understand further, if there are two objects in a sentence, how you are going to convert it. So that's really very interesting as well as important in understanding active and passive voice. So use any one. Clear? Now let's have a look on that. She told us a story. You can see that there are two objects in this sentence. One is us and another is a story. So we are having two objects here. So now the sentence in passive form would be, we were told a story by her, or a story was told to us by her. There are two different methods. Now see, second example, they appointed him as an ambassador. So I told you that if there are two subjects or two objects, students, in one sentence, then you are required to choose any one subject and then start with that in passive voice sentence. Clear? And it means also that you can frame two passive voice sentences from out of one each object. So as you can see in another example, they appointed him an ambassador. So first example would be of passive voice. He was appointed an ambassador. And there is no need to add by them as it is understood. So we are just leaving that they. All right. And another way to convert this active voice sentence into passive voice is that an ambassador was appointed to him. Clear, students? Now, next example you must have look upon, that the story has taught us a good lesson. So there are two objects again. One is us and another one is a good lesson. So one example would be, we have been taught a good lesson by this story. Just remember, before using the prepositional phrase, you will be using both objects. So you can see the underlined objects in both type of sentences. And then in second sentence, it would be converted somehow. A good lesson has been taught to us by the story. So clear, students? This is how the both sentences are changed. Now, use of has, have, had, is, am, are, was, were, to plus verbs first form. So she has to help us. We have to be helped by her. So this is the way how we are going to change, and the rest of the rules will be same. We have to learn English. There is one object, but how we are going to change it? So English has to be learnt, and there is no need to use by us. We are leaving it because English has to be learnt, and that's simply understood that we are leaving by us. I had to wait for the bus. The bus had to wait by me, or it must be awaited. So has, have, had to plus verbs first form is equal to has, have, had plus to plus be, or plus verbs third form. V3 means verbs third form. Clear, students? Now next is, let's understand about modal auxiliary verbs in detail. I have already told you that you have to change your modal auxiliary verb according to whatever is given in active voice. So let's have a look on that. The modal auxiliary verbs are can, could, shall, should, may, might, will, would, and must. Clear? So verbs first form, modal plus be plus verbs third form. So she can speak Chinese. Here the modal verb is here can speak. So it means that can speak is a present tense verb sentence, and in that we are going to change auxiliary verb can be spoken, because we are not going to change its form. Otherwise, if it would have been in past tense, we would have changed. If it would have been like that, she could speak Chinese, so Chinese could be spoken by her, but we are using the same can because it in active voice it is given as in present tense. We must preserve the tigers. The tigers must be preserved. So this is how modal auxiliary verbs will be used in a sentence. Now, use of must have, should have, could have, might have, would have plus verbs third form equals to must have, should have. They will be changing it into passive voice. It will be converting into must have, should have, could have, might have, would have plus been. Now you will be using been here as an auxiliary verb. So been plus verbs third form. You can see from example now, he should have stolen my pen. This is the active voice. And passive voice, my pen should have been stolen by him. So you can see this is very simple. If you practice that, how should have is also used, and rest of the rules are same. My pen is converted into from object slot to subject slot, and should have been is here in place of should have stolen. So should have been stolen and by him. All right, students. Now, next example, they must have left any sign. So, passive voice sentence would be any sign must have been left. So, this is how it is going to be converted by using been plus third form of the verb. Now, here, no need to add by plus subject if the subject is. That's what I have been telling you earlier also. If the subject is we, they, someone, somebody, none, nobody, everybody, people, etc. If these type of words you see in subject, then there will be no need to add by plus subject. That means we do not need prepositional phrase in the passive voice object. It is well understood by its own that it is a statement, affirmative statement that is proven. So, for example, they have stolen my pen. Now, no need to add by plus subject in this sentence in the object of passive voice, and the sentence would be correct if it is my pen has been stolen. The next is they must have left any sign. So, any sign must have been left. Now, students, let's have a look on negative sentences, how we are going to do it from active to passive sentences. So, negative sentences remain negative. They have not stolen my pen. So, my pen has not been stolen. You are not going to change negative from positive. Whatever voice is there in active, negative or positive, you will keep same. You will not change it. All right. So, negative sentences will be negative only in passive voice also. So, next example, you can see they must not have left any sign. Any sign must not have been left. So, next is anybody has done homework. Homework has not been done. So, this is how the negative sentences remain negative in the passive conversion also. Now, look at this table, students, active and passive as well. Now, simple present, verb plus first form, then object plus is, am, are plus verbs third form. Then present continuous if there are is, am, are or and verbs ing form. Then in passive voice, object plus is mr plus being plus verbs third form will be used. Then if it is present perfect, has plus have, has or have plus verbs third form. Then in the passive voice, object will be definitely first and has, have plus been plus verbs third form will be there. And in the present perfect, the structure would be somehow like this: has, have plus been plus verbs ing. Then not used commonly. So this is somehow we are actually escaping. So this is how we are working according to the structures also. Now this is simple past tense and we are going to change it in the same way like simple past. Verb second form is there. And in passive voice, object was, were, verb's third form is here. Then in past continuous, was, were plus verbs plus ing is there. Then in passive voice, it would be object plus was plus maybe it is were according to the singular or plural plus being plus verbs third form. So remember all these structures very well. Then in past perfect, had plus verbs third form is found in active voice sentence. Then in passive voice, it would have been object plus had plus been plus verbs third form. Then past perfect, had plus been plus verbs ing. So not used commonly. Now you can see how active and passive voice in simple future. So let's have a look with examples. Simple future: will, shall plus verbs first form. In passive voice, object plus will oblique shall plus be plus verbs third form. And in future continuous, the structure would be somehow will, shall plus verbs plus be plus verbs ing form. So not common in passive voice, and this is not common. So in future perfect sentence, will oblique shall plus have plus verbs third form is found. And in passive we are going to use object plus will plus oblique shall plus have been plus verbs third form. And now in future perfect, will, shall, have been verbs ing. So and this is a sentence not used very commonly. Now you can see example of the first and second. What I am telling you, she will write beautiful poems. This is a simple future tense, and now we are going to change it according to the given structure. So beautiful poems will be written by her, and this is according to the structure which I have told you just now. In the second sentence, he will have done homework. And the passive voice would be according to homework will have been done by him. So this is how active to passive conversion is. Very simple, very easy, students, once it is understood in a very depth way. So look at these examples, students. She will write poems beautifully. And in another sentence, poems will be beautifully written by her. So beautifully is an adverb and it goes just before the verb's third form, not after that. So you can see that there is verb in the passive voice sentence. Return is the verb. So written, before written, we are writing beautifully as per the rule. And this is the adverb which goes just before the verb's third form. Then in next sentence, he handled the load carefully. And here again you will see an adverb carefully. And the passive voice sentence would be somehow the load was carefully handled by him. So the load was carefully handled by him. That means it handled is verb's third form. And if we are using any adverb in the sentence which is already been used in the active voice, and when we are using it in passive voice as well, so we are using adverb just before the verb's third form. Clear, students? So I really hope you have understood well. Now let's have a look on the passive of yes or no question. Now there are some sentences and you need to change them into passive voice. So just have a very observant look on these type of sentences, how they are converted. Now the first sentence is, can you speak English? Now the focus is really on English. Okay. Now if we are changing this active voice question into passive voice question, so we can ask somehow, can English be spoken by you? So English is direct object in active voice question, but now can would be at the same place, question word would be at the same place, but we are taking the direct object as a subject. And again, be plus third form of the verb plus prepositional phrase. And as I have told you, you will be you in the passive voice also. So the correct sentence, correct passive voice sentence would be, can English be spoken by you? Now next is, has he helped them? So the answer is, have they been helped by him? So you can see, whatever the auxiliary verbs are here, we are starting questions by them only. So this is how you are going to convert your question interrogative sentences into passive voice. Clear? Now in the third type of sentence, did you help him? Then in simple past tense we are going to change. Did would be changing into was. Was he helped? As we all know that when we are using did, then there will be always subjects first form. Verbs first form, sorry. So there will always be verbs first form. So in the first sentence you have seen, did you help him? There is did and there is help, because subject plus verbs first form is used. But in passive voice we will ask, was he helped? Now did has been converted into subject's second form. Okay. Now, so was he helped by you? So the structure would be somehow do, does plus subject plus verbs first form plus object. So it would be changing into is, am, are plus object plus verbs third form plus question mark. But if there is past tense question, did plus subject plus verbs first form plus object, so this will be changed into was, were plus object plus verbs third form. Clear, students? So this is how the active passive voice is really very interesting if you do lots of practice. Now some example of yes or no you can see. Are they planting trees? So the question will be, are trees being planted? Now see, the rules are working same. Just only the formation is changed. Did they tell anything? Was anything told? Then didn't he buy anything? Wasn't anything bought by him? Will he bring the book? Will the book be brought by him? Now passive of WH questions. Why are they planting trees? Why are trees being planted? What did they tell you? What were you told? Who questions are changed in two ways, similar to yes or no. In the same way, who opened the door? Who was the door opened by? Or it may be by whom was the door opened. So this is how WH question is also changed in active to passive voice. Now passive of who question. Who opened the door? Then it will be converted, who was the door opened by? Or it may be, by whom was the door opened? And the second form is really more in use. Who plus be plus object plus verbs third form plus by. Or it may be by whom plus be plus object plus verbs third form. Passive of imperative or let. So now here the uses of imperative sentences. Open the door. So in that case we are using let, and then object will be same and then be plus verb's third form. So let the door be open would be correct imperative passive voice sentence. Let's see next example. Let him open the door. Let the door be opened by him. So let is important in converting the active sentence of imperative case into passive voice. So let plus object plus be plus verb's third form plus by plus subject is really very necessary in these type of sentences. Now voice change. Some examples. Did you teach us? And if it is being changed, were we taught by you? Then another example, she has to prepare food. Food has to be prepared by her. We told you about the accident. By who told you about the accident? By whom were you told about an accident? People are destroying the jungle. The jungle is being destroyed. So this is how students, the active and passive voice exercises will help you to remain more communicative and more efficient, more effective in your speech. And it is really very important to learn how to convert active sentences into passive sentences. So, students, just remember that nothing is impossible if you practice. And if you are practicing, you will really be perfect on one fine day. Clear, students? So, just practice more and more about active and passive voice sentences and keep learning that. So, we have come to the end of the class now. So, see you in the next class, students. Till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and be happy and keep learning. Thank you, students.